Hello, welcome back to the Juntos with Eduardo and Eva podcast. My name is Eva,
My name is Eduardo.
and we're here to talk about love, growth, and walking through life juntos, or together in English. And today we have a very special treat for you. So, we're going to be talking all about discernment and how to distinguish between people's highlight reels and not let that get in the way of your own growth in your own life, in your business, with your family, friends, you name it.
Thank you for that introduction, baby. Yeah, today we the focus of our podcast today is to basically explore some questions regarding the highlights of uh, social media and how that's affecting people's lives nowadays. Just to not only from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective, career perspective as we use social media to judge ourselves and how we're doing in life. So we thought it was important as it was coming up with us for our lives, comparing ourselves to other people online. So we thought it would be a great topic to bring up to people from a real perspective because we don't want to be like other coaches. We don't want to be like other entrepreneurs or other social media influencers that only talk about highlights and really don't give you the meat and potatoes or the real life they're living behind the scenes. Let's get started, babe.
Okay, our first question is how can constant exposure to highlight reels create pressure, comparison, or even distort our sense of success, especially in entrepreneurship?
Okay, so I really like that question because I think, going to social media, YouTube, anything, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it paints a picture of a certain life those people are having that is not real. And I think since I was a kid, I always knew that anything I saw on TV wasn't real, whether it was a cartoon, whether it was a telenovela, or Hollywood. I, I don't know why, but I was smart enough to understand that wasn't real. So fast forward to social media and the invention of it, and I also had the same feeling. But sometimes you have feelings, but you don't have the facts behind, right? And I think for me, something that made it very real was about a month ago when I logged back into my Facebook and LinkedIn. I saw two people that I was telling my girlfriend or Eva. I was telling you, remember those two people that I told you that I know they don't live like that, basically? On LinkedIn and Facebook, they take pictures in front of a Ferrari, Lamborghini, and then they post them, and they're rented. They're rental. One of the guys lives in Miami, and he has just a middle class job, but he makes enough to rent the Lamborghini, buy a Rolex, probably on payments, and then take pictures in front of it, in front of the beach, and then he goes return it. Which, if he's happy with that, that's cool. But if you don't know this guy, you may look at those pictures and think that you're behind because he wears designer clothes, a Rolex, and rents Lamborghinis. And in all reality, someone with a middle class salary could rent all of those things. You could rent a Ferrari because it's like $400 or $500 a day, depending on which Ferrari you're renting. It can get all the way up to 1500, but you can rent it for a day, right? On a middle class salary. If you have roommates or anything like that, you can afford that.
Mhm.
A Rolex also, if you get it on payments, because you can get it from a jeweler, not really from Rolex, straight up from Rolex. You can get it from a jeweler and make payments just like a vehicle, just like a car. And I know that that's what this certain individual is doing. Also ran into a woman that is also a accountant. She's an accountant at one of the at a corporation, and I also know, like I said, middle class pay maybe more than others because she works for a big CPA firm. So maybe she's making like 80, 90, but the way she's trying to sell you her life is like a millionaire. She's really not a millionaire. And also she has um, done surgery on her. We even went back to her pictures because we were being creepy, and then we saw the surgery she's done. And so, to someone outside of that, or someone that doesn't know them, or someone that maybe knows them and is following their journey, you're looking at these people and you think you're behind. You're looking at these people and you think they have the greatest life ever. But you never see behind the camera, right? You never know what's going on behind the camera. And to be honest, all of those things are only done to impress others. They're not really done for yourself. And I hope that those people find themselves because it's tough to live a life that is fake, right? And I think I knew that about people online, but when I logged into those platforms and I saw them, it was a clear reminder that there was a disconnect and that it was real because I was seeing that life.
So, did you have any feelings of like pressure, or did it impact your sense of success when you saw these people?
Not for me, not this time because I exactly knew what they were doing.
But have you ever felt that?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
not
share
not
on that.
not in this situation because I knew the individuals, but
Mhm.
with other people, yes, it has impacted. You know, I can't think names. Oh, I think his name. One of the guys that I follow on YouTube is Grant. I don't remember his last name or the name of his YouTube channel. And his whole YouTube channel is basically talking about how he didn't go to school and became a multimillionaire in real estate before he was 30. And so when you look at that and whether the story is true or not, and you look at your life and you're a middle aged, a 30-year-old guy making 60, 70 at a professional job, and you look at a guy that claims they made multi-million dollar salaries in his early and mid 20s, you compare yourself and then you think that you're behind and you think maybe I should go into real estate. But then one of the things that sometimes you don't realize is that a lot of these people had mentors. And I think they don't share the whole stories of the
Mm.
struggles and the help they had. Um, because a lot of the people that I follow that share their whole stories, they had mentors, and those mentors gave them jobs at their multi-billion sometimes or hundreds of million dollars company. They gave them a job and pay them a 70, $80,000 salary as they were learning the trade, as people would say, and then they give them all that inside information, and then those people also become millionaires, and they don't share that part. And I'm not saying everyone's like that, but if you don't know that part, you feel like you're behind. When in reality is that not all of us have the same opportunities. And that doesn't mean that you can't achieve that, but it may take you longer because you don't have access and the connections that they have. So it's happened to me multiple times with people in real estate and finance and in business in general. There are other people that talk about wholesale real estate and they sell you on this story that they're super successful, but once you do your research and based on that discernment that you feel, then you realize that really all their money comes from the course they sell on doing wholesale.
Yeah, I also have experience with this where I have felt like I was behind in my business. I've had my business for 4 years now, and it's not where I would like it to be mentally, but I know intuitively that it is going at its own pace, just as everything in nature does. But I really struggled with comparison, I would say, like in the last, especially the last 2 years, maybe, like
Hmm.
more strongly. And it did impact my sense of success. And I think the important thing I want to point out is we each have our own definition of success. But what I find is a lot of people will just borrow or adopt the definition of success that gets passed down from their parents or society or their
Hmm.
peers. And then people turn around, and obviously, this isn't everyone, but people who feel like they're not living their potential or really doing what they would truly love to do. I feel like that means you're most likely following someone else's definition of success and not really tuning into what you value and what you want for yourself in your life, what kind of experiences and lifestyle you would like to pursue. But going back to the pressure and the comparison, I felt this a lot as an entrepreneur and more specifically a spiritual entrepreneur because I'm doing things like in that flavor. Like I do a lot of like really deep soul work and healing, and um I would listen to so many entrepreneurs in podcasts. This was like 2 to 3 years ago. I would be listening to all these stories, and there was one story that I kept hearing from multiple entrepreneurs, and it was how they had gotten the insight, like they had discovered whatever modality or whatever they were going to pursue with their entrepreneurship, and then they would go like they left their 9 to 5 and they pursued that business, and then they said like I never looked back and everything just worked out. Like I started getting clients and I've had this business established ever since then. For me, my journey was like basically 4 years of learning how to be an entrepreneur and learning like what were my gaps. Also entrepreneurship in and of itself is like self development and growth on steroids. Like anything that you are not stable in within yourself, it comes up in your business and gets reflected. So there is so much that I have worked through in the past 4 years. And more recently, I had to start reframing and telling myself that it doesn't matter what others are doing, like kind of like a horse with blinders. You have to just look at your lane, look at what's in front of you, look at what resources you have, and not compare to others. And I think there's a difference between inspiration and comparison. And comparison is when you start to feel maybe some resentment or you feel like you're not good enough. And I would say inspiration is when something really deeply resonates with something that you see out on social media. And then you're like, oh, yeah, like I'm going to go do that too. Like I'm in a community with a really beautiful heart led business mentor, and like when she posts, I feel inspired, but I don't feel this, like I feel more so a sense of how do I do that, but in my way? And that's a question that I've started to ask myself that I think is really valuable for not just business, but anything in life. Like when you see something that feels inspirational for you, how would that look for you in your way? And then pursue it that way, because your your steps that you've taken in your life, the journey you've been on, the healing you've gone through, the initiations you've experienced, those are all going to be so unique to you. So no one else has had that path. And it's really important to recognize that.
I think the one of the examples I could give you that I think anyone could find themselves in or maybe has experienced already is the food and trip vlog channels. Uh, I don't know if you guys encountered this before, but sometimes you come across someone that goes to a place that you live near or your city, and they come and show the prettiest restaurants, the best views, and they use these wonderful filters with this nice music. And then you go to those places, and it's basically like a fart on your face. It's like nothing interesting. It just made it very, very, very interesting to you with filters. and music, and then when you go there, it's like, you know, nothing great there. So I think that's basically what another thing I have experienced that has made me more discerning and just keep to myself and try to stay neutral with the information I see online and do research for myself in order to see if I want to do what they say they do, right?
Yeah, and with the entrepreneurship thing, the other thing I want to add is like for me, what really helped pull back the curtain and make me understand how what people are showing online is not necessarily the full story, which I think is what we're touching on. Like sometimes it's not totally fake, like you were saying. Like there are people that do rent stuff and take pictures certain places to make it seem like, oh yeah, like this is the lifestyle I live, when that might not be true. But I think that there's also people who will only share like a portion of it, right? And then it kind of
Hmm.
make it seem like that's what they're doing. Like I've had people think that I'm like have like this like really amazing successful business, and I've always like I've never shied away from pulling back the curtain and letting people know like actually I'm currently working like three different businesses to get income in, because this is not full time yet in this business that is my ultimate dream. And I'm not afraid to do that because I think it was so important for me to learn that what people show on social media might not be the full story. And so I never want to misinform or mislead someone to think that this is what my life is like, when I got caught up in that myself. And I learned through like actually talking to a lot of different entrepreneurs, like how they were being supported financially in order to allow their business the space and the time to pour into it. And some either had like a lot of savings from corporate jobs, some receive financial support from family monthly, others, uh, what,
Spouses that
yeah,
make a
like
lot of money in a
the
corporate
spouse
job.
is making, this was our current situation in the past half year, where the spouse is supporting the household. Um, so I think also like hearing other entrepreneurs like, oh, I'm actually doing this job because I'm not full time in my business yet, uh, was really like the green light that I needed to understand, oh, so I can't really trust what is all being shared necessarily. Like it just reminded me I don't know what I don't know, and I don't have time to sit there and try to figure out what everyone else is doing behind the scenes. Like that would be such a waste of my existence. So all I can do is focus on me and what I'm building, and let everything else
Yeah.
just be. And I think we can move on to the next question unless you have something to add.
No, let's say that in this question. I think we can move on to the in what ways can discernment help us separate truth from illusions online, and how do we actually strengthen the discernment in our daily lives? I can start with that if you don't mind. I think that there was a time where I wanted to be a lawyer, and part of that is because naturally I'm able to see the two sides of the coin as I like to see it. I'm able to defend either side, and I'm able to see uh, the faults on its side. So what I'm trying to say there is that in order for you to separate the truth from the illusion, and this is just based on my experience, maybe your experience will be different, is that you need to be able to see both sides of the coin. And this doesn't apply just to online, but also politics, religion, your personal views. You should be always open to challenging your own views, your partner's views, and your parents' views. You should not just live under one view. One of the ways I challenge history, religion, my beliefs, finance, whatever, is I read both sides of the coin. For example, uh, as someone that that went to school, both in the United States and Mexico, I was able to see how the story was told from country to country. And I was able to see that it was totally different. And so, in order to understand the true history, what I did was read what Mexico says versus what the US says versus what independent people say. Uh, and does that independent individual have biases? Are they Mexican? Are they American? Are they a certain religion? So I know it sounds like a lot of work, but in order for you to understand and make your own decision, you have to do research. And the other side of it needs to be that you need to do research within too. That meaning that you have to listen to your gut. You have to listen to your gut, but your gut can be wrong too, right? Because at the end of the day, your gut is built with your opinions and based on your beliefs and perceptions of the world. So if your gut has a certain perception, they may be wrong. Now, that being said, can you also then listen to your intuition? Because your intuition is connected more to spirituality, right? So your intuition can also offer guidance around this. So being able to tell and see both sides of the coin, being able and open to that side and the other, right? The opposing sides, listening to your gut and also listening to your intuition. And those are things that are going to actually strengthen your discernment. And this is something you can use in daily life. Like even when we have opinions in our love life, I tend to sit down after the argument or after my opinion was voiced. And just sometimes I'd sit down and I ask myself, where is this coming from? Is this real? Is this true? And why is it real or why isn't real? Uh, and and why is Eva reacting this way? Why is it true or why isn't it true? So then I'm able to understand all the sides and whether I'm right or wrong based on what I can see.
I think one of the most applicable places where I learned discernment was when it came to people and what I chose to believe about people, because this happens everywhere you go where someone has an experience with someone else. And so then they go and they tell other people what their experience was and paint a certain picture. And if you don't have enough interactions with that person yourself, then you're probably more likely to believe this person, right? Especially if you have an actual relationship with them and then they come and tell you all this stuff. Well, I used to believe people, like I would just take what they were saying and accept that as the truth. But I have since learned that sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the times, our beliefs and perceptions of other people are based on our own experience, and it's also filtered through what we've gone through and the interactions that we've had. So, for instance, like Eduardo could have a friend who he has only had good interactions with, and that same friend could have a bad experience or interaction with me. And then I don't have the same type of relationship that Eduardo has with this person. So like this, that same person can have different relationships. And I used to like judge people and think that, oh, like if you're hanging out with this person then you're just like them. And I wasn't able to like separate people as individuals in my brain. Like I would just lump them together because I just, if someone was like a threat to me, I would assume like anyone they would hang out with is also a threat. And that was like such a disservice because I was painting pictures of people that probably weren't necessarily true, and I didn't even give those people a chance. And now I know, since I'm much older and have gone through some experiences and also learned from Eduardo, that um, you have to really create your own idea. And I think that's what like Eduardo does really well, is he considers like both sides of it and then he chooses for himself. And I think that's what discernment essentially is you really choosing for yourself what you're going to believe, because knowing that everyone is going to have an opinion on something, and their experience might be different than yours. Like another example is restaurants. We've all been to restaurants that we absolutely love. We've never had a bad experience. And if you go on their Google reviews, I can guarantee you there's probably one or two Google reviews that where people did not have the same experience as you. And so it just goes to show that there's so many factors, and we really have to just go with what we choose, like what we believe ourselves based on our experience. Because if we're walking around just treating people based on what we heard about them, we're not even giving them a chance. And then we might be missing out on some great relationships that way. And I just want to offer what discernment essentially means for anyone who hasn't really heard this term before. So it's possessing a keen ability to perceive, understand, and judge things clearly and intelligently, distinguishing between truth and falsehood, good and evil, or the best course of action. So that's a general definition, and I feel like that really paints the picture. Essentially, it's you coming up with what's your truth. And I think in our early years, a lot of that gets painted by other people because we're relying on those other people, especially like caregivers, to tell us how it is, to give us the inside scoop. But we have to remember that everyone's coming from their own experience, and their own experience might be painting that picture. Like, I know people today who have bad relationships with people that I have good relationships with, and like the people who are having bad relationships are pulling in from the past experience and not really seeing people with like fresh new eyes. And in the present, they're still stuck on stuff that's happened in the past. And I think that that's actually one of the things that really impacts people and their ability to have healthy relationships.
Yeah, I think along these lines, I know this hasn't been brought up in this conversation, or maybe it doesn't have to do with the conversation, but the way I approach life, and maybe I've said it before, is that every day is a new day. Every interaction is a new interaction. So if I have an issue with someone at work, I'm not perfect. I tend to give him a chance the next day. How's the next day gonna go? I'm not holding back to how in the past or last week or yesterday. Try to do myself a favor and let it go in the morning through meditation, journaling, or just through enjoying music, and then start from a clean slate every day. If I can, I'm not perfect, but if I can, I give myself, the world, and that individual a chance every single day, because we all have different layers and we are situational. Maybe that individual was super mad yesterday because something happened in his personal life, and that's why he talked to me the way he talked to me. So you never know what's going on in people's lives. So it's better to just let it go and listen to them. I had an individual that came in yelling at me when I was a personal banker because a transaction that had gone through, she thought she hadn't made. And she was yelling at everyone. And my go to was always to bring him into my office and see what's going on so they're not making a whole scene at the lobby. So I grabbed her, I took her into my office, and we talked about it, calmed her down, listened to her, mirror what she was saying, and finally got down to her kid had died. She was like in her 60s. His Her kid was in his 30s, and he had died from some medical issues, and he was one of the incomes in the house, and they were having a hard time, and now this transaction was going to put her in a pickle. And in the end, it ended up being a transaction she made. We figured that out, but she left my office happy. But do you see how there was a layer of she's not having a good time this week. She's not having a good time that whole month and maybe for the next few months because her kid died and she lost that income as well. So you have to look at people as multi-layered and you have to slow down and see what's going on in their lives before you make a judgment on how they're treating you and what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, the thing that has helped me have more compassion for others is learning how to give myself that compassion, because we can only go as far with people as we have gone within ourselves. Eduardo has cultivated this compassion for the most part, right? Because again, no one is perfect, but in general, I would consider Eduardo a very patient, compassionate, loving human, and he cares for others, and that was cultivated from a young age. For me, I feel like that's like my natural state. I think it's everyone's natural state actually. But then I think a bunch of like stuff gets piled on us and we get conditioned. But I was very judgmental when I was younger because that was the model that I was given from my parents. And then in my adulthood, as I did healing, as I did deeper self discovery, I understood, oh, like these are all the ways I was abandoning myself, or coming from fear, or and so meeting those parts within me, I'm able to then meet those parts in other people. I'll have people get really emotional in front of me because my presence tends to make people feel really safe because they can feel my regulated nervous system. We can talk about nervous system another time, but people will tell me like, oh, like it's so easy to talk to you, you're such a great listener, I feel really safe in your presence. And that's because I cultivated that for myself, and so then I can then give that to others. And also a reminder, hurt people hurt people. But I also saw this quote the other day, and I thought it was really beautiful. Hurt people can also heal people. So when you take that pain and you turn it into purpose, your mess into your message, your wound into wisdom, when you make that transformation process for yourself, you then have that gift to give to others. I think one of the gifts I've received from Eduardo is learning how to accept people and meet them where they are.
Remember, you have the option to, and I'll say this and then we'll move on to the next question, okay? Because we spent a lot of time here. But one of the things, one of my phrases that I say a lot is from suffering to conquering. That's the story you're telling yourself. Do you want to keep suffering or do you want to conquer your fears, conquer your financial, disparity, whatever that is that you're fighting. Even I know it's not easy. I know, I get it. But even during medical issues that you may have, do you want to be a conqueror or do you want to be someone that suffers it? And even if you lose the battle, you went down fighting like a warrior, not just taking it as is and being like, well, it is what it is. Suffering from conquering from the victim to the hero. That's one of the things that I say. But with that, we'll move on to the next one. So, how do you even stay authentic online, right? How do you even show up authentically while honoring the private parts of your life, the messiness, and, if you will, the sacred parts of life? How do you show up as yourself? Listen, all of us have different smoke screens. Whether we want to admit it or not, we do. You're not the same person at church that you are in your home. You're not the same person in school that you are with your parents. You're not the same person at work as you are with your partner or friends, right? That's the reality of things. And hopefully you are able to accept that about yourself. I mean, I literally have a customer service voice that I was trained to have. And sometimes when I'm in a situation, it may come up. Why? Because I was trained to have a customer service voice. I'm not going to swear as much at work. But with that being said, if you're online and you want to show up as yourself, try to be as unfiltered as you can. That would be my advice for anyone that wants to do anything online and wants to show up authentically. And also, don't share things that are too private unless your whole channel is about being intimate with your followers. But if your channel is not about being intimate, don't share anything with them that you wouldn't share with a client, or don't share something with them that you wouldn't share with a friend. Because there are also different tiers with friends, right? Like, for example, with me, I have friends that don't know many details of my life, but I have very close friends, my best friends, that know everything about my life. So if you want to be in the circle of my best friends, I have to know you in person. I have to know who you are, your story, before you can see my full story. So how do you show up online authentically? Show up and be a friend to those people that are across from you, but also follow the guidelines that you may have through the channels that you're using to express yourself. Some channels don't like when you swear. Some channels don't like when you talk about certain things. Doesn't mean that they're what do you call when they're censoring? Doesn't mean that they're censoring you all the time. It just means that there are certain professional guidelines to what you're doing. But try to be yourself. Try to be as unfiltered as you can. Try to say the thoughts that you have unfiltered. Maybe remove a little bit of that meat so that you don't get in trouble, but show up as you would show up for one of your friends.
Yeah, and like you said, there's different levels. The thing that came up for me, and this happens when people are talking, I have like explored so many different things, and then when I'm having a conversation, I'll like it'll come to me like in that moment of like, oh, like you should mention this tool. And so for anyone who's listening, if this part piques your interest, then I highly recommend you go look up the it's like levels or steps of intimacy. So it basically talks about like how intimacy is built between two people, and how sometimes like someone's kind of further along than the other. And I think that that's a good gauge of like who to share your more deeper private things with. I think when you build that mutually with someone, you're more willing to go there and to have those conversations and open up more. I am someone who does share a lot of her life online. I've made videos of things that I've been going through, especially on my entrepreneurship journey and with my family and being a cycle breaker in the lineage, and spirituality like was kind of how it all started for me. Um, and I would say that a big part of it is really tuning into what feels in integrity with you. If you feel like there is a message or something that you can share and offer that would help someone out there moving through a similar experience, then I would say go ahead and share that if that's what feels true for you. But if you're still moving through it and it's feeling very raw, and you're feeling like you need time to heal, you need time to process what is going on, then I would say slow down and maybe wait until you're a little bit past that season of like mending to your wounds and supporting and nourishing yourself and renewing after that experience, whatever that is. Because I think it's important to show up authentic, but I think not at the expense of yourself. And so I would distinguish between those two. I mean, there's definitely things that I've shared that are personal online. I've also been more vulnerable in like one-on-one conversations, and then in like my private containers as well. And like I said, I just share whatever comes to me in the moment. I'm like never really planning what I'm going to say. I'm just present, and then whatever comes, I'm trusting that's the message and what's meant to be shared. But I do think that there's also an importance of having boundaries and knowing what feels like, okay, we're going to hold off on sharing this, or maybe this is something we don't share. And it's not like you're hiding it, like you can be as real as you want. But I think ultimately it comes down to your intention and that you're coming from a space that feels like truth and integrity for yourself. And I think that's all that matters. So, this one was a little bit of a longer one. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Juntos with Eva, with Eduardo and Eva podcast. And please click the subscribe and bell buttons so that you don't miss another episode so you can be notified when we post. And share this with a friend, with a family member, with anyone who might benefit from hearing this conversation. Again, on this podcast, we have real and raw conversations around love and life and growth. And we are here to support people out there. And we look forward to tuning in on the next one. Also, feel free to drop a comment. Babe, anything else you want to end on?
No, I don't think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.